Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Kristen, and today I want to talk about a really big part of my life, which is the way that I eat. So why did I start eating a vegan diet? Well, it started, I was actually kind of dared to try it. I had been really resistant to it in the first place. Why? Just because I felt like it was unnecessarily restrictive and that there would be nothing to eat, and didn't understand the point of it. At the time, about a year and a half ago when this all began, I was eating a really strict and restrictive diet of its own that I felt was best for me. So a little bit of background on that. I was diagnosed with PCOS back in 2015. So about 4 years ago, and with that came along insulin resistance. So it was really easy for me to put on weight. And what I had found were that anything that was heavy in carbohydrates instantly turned into fat in my body, which isn't the most comfortable thing. So for that, I was eating really low carb, really high protein, which meant a good amount of meat like chicken and turkey and cottage cheese, like whole fat yogurt and things of that nature. And then Chris and I started dating again, which is an entire story in itself. Our 10-year history is quite a ride, but that's a story for another time. So when we got back together, he came into this relationship now as a vegan, and it didn't make sense to me, and I gave him a really hard time about it. I remember telling him, that's not even a healthy diet. You're skinny enough, you don't need to be eating this way. This is just making things difficult for me. What are we supposed to eat? And when it boiled down to it, he asked me objectively, without trying to convince me to do it or not do it, Kristen, why are you so against a plant-based diet? And I remember saying to him, I don't think it's healthy. And I couldn't do it because I couldn't give up cheese and dairy. I just couldn't. And Chris replied to me with this one statement that impacted me more than I even realized at the time. He said to me, you can actually do anything. It's just a matter of putting in the effort and trying. And that was such a wake-up call for me. I actually took that as a challenge, which has had a ripple effect into a lot of aspects of my life since then, a year and a half ago. But he was completely right. I could do anything. I could eat a different way. I could cut out yogurt and milk if I wanted to. So with that, I was like, well, dang it, now I have to prove to myself that I could try this, even though I still think it's a stupid diet. So that's where it began, and I started with the 30-day challenge by I almost butchered her name, Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, and it was so enlightening for me. Originally, Chris and I had both decided I was going to challenge myself to eat a vegan diet for 30 days only, just to know I could. It stuck on day 31, 32, 33, 34, and until today, a year and a half later, I'm still eating the same way because it made so much sense to me. So here's what I have to say about the 30-day challenge and Colleen's program. Well, first of all, it's completely free. So all I did was go to her website, put my email address in, and that day I was started. I every single day would receive an email in my inbox. It was lighthearted, and it was such an appropriate introduction to somebody just starting to enter this vegan world. It kind of ranges from why eating plant-based is good for you, why it's good for the world, kind of broaches some practical topics like how to have conversations with this about resistant family members, or she had like this cute video that she filmed in a restaurant with a friend in a sort of natural conversation of how to order in a restaurant and be a little bit pickier, and how to kind of do it gracefully, and how to field comments that people make to you and challenge you on it. So she has a lot of really helpful tools in that, which came in amazingly handy for me. That first year I went back home for Thanksgiving and was put on the spot by a lot of my family members because it is a really drastic change from how I was eating before. So back to when it all began. Why was Chris eating this way? I think this is an interesting point too. So he was raised Seventh-day Adventist, which if you don't know anything about that religion and way of life, one of the pillars is having a healthy body and having a healthy lifestyle. So they tend to promote a vegetarian lifestyle and healthy eating and healthy habits in general. So he was raised that way. I don't want to speak on behalf of all Seventh-day Adventists, but that's kind of what was infused in Chris's upbringing. So he had a healthy basis to begin with, and then he was super convinced by two things. A documentary he watched on Netflix, I think What the Health was the final straw, and the blue zones. The blue zones. The blue zones. Have you ever heard of the blue zones? If you haven't, it's fascinating. So there was a National Geographic study that was produced over, I want to say 30 plus years, that looked at the parts of the world where there are the most people living to be centenarians. Centenarians are people that live to be over 100 years old. So they found there are 5 concentrated parts of the world where there's a ton of people just living a really long time. So the study looked at what they had in common. Most of it had to do with commonalities in their diet, which is mostly plant-based. The best resource I have found for learning about the blue zones was an interview on one of the podcasts I like to listen to called the Ultimate Health Podcast. I can look it up to see exactly which episode number it is, and I don't remember the name of the expert they were interviewing on the topic, but you could look it up. So that was really convincing to Chris, and he then decided he wants to live to be 100. And now that we're together for the long haul, we're both planning to live to be 100. What's the best way to prolong your life? Well, changing the way you eat. So if you want to stay healthy and live a long, healthy life where you're not reliant on prescription drugs and subject to the high likelihood of hypertension, heart attack, heart disease, stroke, all of these major killers, diabetes, of course, this is a really good thing to consider. So one of my other favorite resources is the book How Not to Die by Michael Greger. He is an incredible author, and this book, while it's a little hefty in size, you can get the audiobook. It tells you everything you need to know. This is like the holy grail of plant-based eating. He is like the holy grail master of plant-based eating. Before I even knew about this book, I was listening to his podcast. Michael Greger has an amazing podcast. It's called Nutrition Facts with Michael Greger. His voice can be a little dry, but it's enlightening. So he has committed his life to completely non-biased, non-funded research, takes no money from any corporations to give black and white data that is completely based in nutrition and the outcomes of how it can shape your life. His podcast episodes are anywhere from like 7 to maybe 20 minutes. Highly recommend finding him, scrolling through, finding something that interests you, and that's a good place to kind of like bite into, to start opening your mind to this. This book, I can't recommend it enough. Since starting eating plant-based, I've noticed so many really good changes in my body. I used to have this experience every afternoon of just about every day where I would get really, really tired and this intense sort of brain fog. I didn't really know how to articulate it back then or what it could have possibly been caused by, but in the afternoons, I would feel this, that no amount of coffee was really remedying, and it was regardless of kind of what I was doing with the day, how much sleep I was getting, how much I was exercising or not. And since eating plant-based, this has not been an issue anymore. I have steady energy throughout the day and I sleep really well at night. Other than that, my skin has gotten so much better. Since having the diagnosis of PCOS, it usually comes with a pretty hefty amount of acne, which unfortunately I suffered from for years. I did everything. I did monthly treatments of the zapping laser treatment. I was on every single antibiotic, every topical ointment, everything that made my skin really red, super damaged. The acne was still there. I did 2 full courses of Accutane. Even after the second time around, I still had breakouts. I still had pimples. I was on and off birth control for years. I just thought it was something I had to live with. Since cutting out dairy and converting to a vegan diet, my skin is so much better. I have clear skin now and it is awesome. Dairy is actually really highly inflammatory, which can show itself in your face and in your complexion, but it also in so many other areas of your life. It can make you just feel bloated and it can make you carry extra water weight, and it's really bad for inflammatory conditions, autoimmune disorders. Now that it's just out of the question that I ever eat dairy, it's made a huge difference in my skin. Using the bathroom. So this might be a little TMI, but that's just how I am. I share lots of things. So before eating plant-based, I was chronically constipated. I would use the bathroom once every 3-4 days, and that was normal for me. But that's not normal for anybody. Now that I eat a regularly plant-based diet, I am using the bathroom regularly too. Yay me! It feels so much better. There's so much fiber in a plant-based diet and things that aren't sticking to your guts and intestines. I even a few years ago, went through having a colonic twice, thinking that it would reset my gut and maybe eliminate the constipation. It didn't. It just felt really uncomfortable for a really long time, and it didn't solve the problem, but now I'm totally regular and that feels really good too. The other thing is my weight was yo-yoing pretty hardcore for a really long time. I was doing low carb, I was doing this, I was doing that. I had to take metformin. I was just kind of all over the place. My body couldn't settle in at any weight. The dairy and the inflammation just was making that even more exacerbated. And now since eating plant-based, regardless of how much I'm exercising, I've stayed at a healthy weight, and that is also something that is just so nice to not have to worry about. It's also really nice having this common thread with my partner. I know for some people that might want to start eating plant-based, but their partner isn't on board about it. It can be really challenging. But I can say for Chris and I, it's been really fun to have a common ground for us to talk about, for us to be passionate about, for us to share what we've learned about it, and share so much fun and experimentation in the kitchen. Between the two of us, both of us or one of us is cooking up a storm every day. That's the thing with eating this way. We don't even like eating out at restaurants most of the time because it tastes better and it's more cost effective to be cooking at home. So we're constantly trying something new. We make dishes that are based in all kinds of stuff I didn't even know I loved. We've even made something that was reminiscent of like this flavorful, crispy, dense steak, but it was a mushroom. I make stuff that's based in cauliflower or based in zucchini instead of pasta. Gosh, it's just so fun. And so we love sharing that together. It's amazing the possibility. Cheese, we make cheese out of almonds. Cheese out of almonds, all out of nuts and several other ingredients, and it's amazing. It's fun. And so we really enjoy that, and it's just an added benefit, how good it is for your health and how good it is for the environment. It's just a really good side effect too of the simplicity of knowing that you did no contribution at all to any animal harm. You know, just to say no thanks to that cake that somebody brought in, that's okay. I'm completely gonna remove myself from the process that it took to get that milk out of that cow and put it in this dish and bring it to me. I'm just eliminating myself from that process altogether, and that feels really good too. Just imagine if more of us did that, how many less animals would need to be put through torture and harm and killing, and the emissions of the greenhouse gases from processing that meat and those products. So that's a really good side effect. Another cool component about going plant-based is the community that you start to find and the people that share this common ground, or who are even just interested in hearing your perspective or talking about it more. Chris and I were on a flight over this summer going to Europe, and it was one of those long flights, maybe 8 or so hours, where they were serving meals. And we looked at the little menu. None of it was gonna work for us. Most of them had meat in them. I think the vegetarian option was a cream-based item. We were like, man, too bad we didn't bring more food to eat. And we flagged down our flight attendant and politely said, you know, we're vegan. It doesn't look like there's any options. We forgot to elect it ahead of time. And this flight attendant happened to say, oh, I'm vegan too. I can make you guys something amazing. Like, I love to eat on these flights. And so it was the best case scenario. She whipped us something up, veggies, potatoes, a whole lot of things that really filled us up. But we had such a wonderful conversation with her, and it's kind of just the people you meet along the way that share in this experience. It's a really good sense of community, because in general, these people are gonna be caring, thoughtful people who care about what they do, the impact that it has on others and on the environment. And those are good people to have around. One of the outstanding quotes that I remember from that podcast, the Blue Zones interview from the Ultimate Health podcast, was he said, one of the very best things that anybody can do for their health is to be friends with a vegan. And gosh darn it, it's true. I think just having that influence can be really eye-opening for people who hadn't previously been open to plant-based. One point that I really want to get across is that I'm not here to judge the way anybody else chooses to live their life or what they choose to eat, nor am I here to convince anybody to make a change or do anything that I'm doing. Becoming plant-based, eating vegan, changing your diet is a completely 100% personal decision. But maybe the reason that you're watching this is because you're interested in it already. So if that's the case, I want to just give you a couple of tips that might make it a little bit easier to start broaching the idea of eating plant-based. So it's really not as hard as it seems. For starters, maybe just start with a meatless Monday. I know countless people that do this. It makes them feel really good, and it's not that hard to do. You can think about it throughout the week. If you're planning your meals, or if you just want to plan this one special meal that kind of makes you think a little bit harder, use Pinterest, use Google, ask a vegetarian, go on Instagram. You'll find hundreds and hundreds of easy recipes varying from Mexican food to Asian food to American food to whatever. You can find so many plant-based options, and you just make a couple swaps of something that you're already used to, and bam, you're making a wonderful vegan meal. Probably one of the easiest things to eat, I would say, is the Beyond Burger or the Impossible Burger. Yeah, you can get them at restaurants, but you can just buy them frozen at the grocery store. For us, our regular grocery stores and Whole Foods definitely carry them, but they taste just like hamburgers. It's kind of eerie. They even are made with like beet juice that you don't really taste it, but it like oozes out as if it's, you know, like a bloody burger, which is a little creepy, but I really can't even taste the difference. So if you live with somebody who's trepidatious to start eating like, ooh, that crazy vegan food, what is it, tofu? Maybe impress them with the Beyond Burger. Maybe impress them with jackfruit. Jackfruit is this freaky fruit that comes in like a spiky watermelon looking skin, and the inside is a very meaty consistency that's really reminiscent of like meat. Trader Joe's sells it in a can. It's really inexpensive, and if you just marinate it and make it like for tacos, burritos, enchiladas, or something like that, along with all your other fixings, it tastes the same. So there are a couple of good options. I would definitely also recommend checking out Colleen Patrick-Gudreau's 30-day challenge. If you have a commute like me and every single day you're listening to a podcast or an audiobook or music or something, just sign up for her email, cancel it if you don't like it, but just take a listen to those first few episodes and just kind of start to hear the perspective of how you can shift your mind and how easy it is to make these small changes in your life. Of course, I also recommend Dr. Michael Greger's podcast, Nutrition Facts, and his book, definitely his book, How Not to Die. And maybe it'll be a little bit easier for you to start putting in place some plant-based options if that's something that you're interested in. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope that it was interesting for you. I hope maybe you learned something. And please feel free to reach out to me with any comments. I'm eager to put out some videos of easy plant-based meals that you can make. And have a really good day. You coming to say hi? You want to be in the video too? Hi. Do you want to be on the video? This one does not eat a plant-based diet. She loves her fancy feast, don't you? 30-day challenge by I almost butchered her name. This 30-day challenge by Colleen Patrick, because I didn't understand. And the mail's here. Oh, thank God. Where was I? Oh, look alive, look alive.